I felt like a trapped animal. This is not your destiny or calling.
You've always enjoyed entertaining people, like from young?
On my mother's side was the Harrison Brothers Circus. So these were people, they were scrappers, they were nomads, and they would travel around with this group of people. They eventually sold to the Barnum and Bailey's Circus. So my mom always says, "You got the circus blood." You know, born to perform.
Playing a different character, you're experiencing somewhat of a newfound freedom for yourself. Can you tell us more about that?
When I fully embraced that character and let that brain of that character take over, funny things will come into the brain and out of the mouth.
How have you used Toastmasters to experiment?
Oh, I love that word because that's exactly what it allows us to do, right? Toastmasters for me was the thing that felt right. Accredited speakers within Toastmasters International. This is an accreditation that is very, very hard to get. You know what? I was born to do that. I'm going to figure it out because that thought fills me with energy and hope and passion. If you can be your own best audience, you can be the one giving yourself a standing ovation. You can be your own #1 fan. That's where it starts. And have fun.
Toast and Tea, where we have all the tea, tips, and stories, here to inspire you. Hosted by Little Norway's Toastmasters. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the podcast, Toast and Tea. I'm your host for today's podcast. My name is Shantia Crowley. I'm pleased to introduce today's guest, Rebecca P. Murray, a woman who's been honing her communication and leadership skills since college. She often jokes that if Toastmasters had been a major, her GPA would have been through the roof. Outside of Toastmasters, she shines as a Mainstage, Emcee, and communications edutainer. Through her company, Showcase Your Shine, she brings energy and expertise to every event. Please join me in welcoming Distinguished Toastmaster Rebecca P. Murray.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be your guest.
Rebecca, after viewing your portfolio, it's clear that you are a multi-talented creative with natural charisma. I'm excited to learn more on how you've developed that. But to start out, I'd like to learn about your Toastmasters journey and what brought you to Toastmasters.
What brought me to Toastmasters was a woman that I met in college, a year ahead of me. We were in the same program in school, the nutrition science program. I had entered this program because I failed a math class, went to my counselor and said, "What are all the majors that have no more math?" And then I chose from one of those. And I thought this was going to be a really boring choice for me. But early in, I met Jan, and everything that Jan did, I wanted to do also. I just saw her as a trailblazer, confident, eloquent woman. And so when the day came that she said, "Would you like to come to Toastmasters with me?" Of course, I said, "What's that?" But yes, always yes. Walked into Theta Chi fraternity, which is where the meeting was held in the dining room there. Now, I'd only been in that fraternity in the past at 300-person keggers, but I did not tell that to Jan because I had turned over a new leaf once I met her. And boy, I was hooked instantly. It was Town and Gown Toastmasters. In 2 years later, I was the president of that club. And when I moved to Seattle shortly after graduation, that was one of the first things that I did was to seek out a Toastmasters club in downtown Seattle, Success Masters. And it was through that I was invited to pursue a career in financial services, back to the math again. And that launched, that was sort of the start of a never-ending trail of wonderful things because of Toastmasters.
I love that. What we share in common there is I was also avoiding the math classes in college. I tried to take as many art classes as I possibly could fill into my schedule. Or liberal arts classes. I was not interested in taking the math classes, so I tried to avoid them at all costs.
It's painful when you take a class that you know you're not cut out for this. This is not your destiny or calling, and it feels like a trap, like you're trapped. I felt like a trapped animal. I don't know if you felt that way, where you know it's just so wrong for you,
Mhm.
and is there something else that will feel right? And Toastmasters for me was the thing that felt right.
And that's why I've been a part of it for 4 years. So how long has it been for you up until this point?
Oh, Toastmasters.
Yes.
Altogether, I took a very long time off between, I want to say 1990 and 2016, and then or 2013, and then since then solidly back. I realized also if I hadn't taken all of those years off, how what I missed out on for myself. So I want to say total something like 16 years.
Oh, wow. I mean, that's still that's impressive. I think the most I've heard someone so far being Toastmasters was for 30 years, and that was Bobby. Bobby's just been a loyal Toastmaster um, for some time since she lived on the East Coast. So, how have you used Toastmasters to experiment?
Oh, I love that word because that's exactly what it allows us to do, right? To experiment with stories, pulling stories through your life. During COVID, I started experimenting with characters. I would turn off my camera, and let's say I was doing table topics, and then they'd introduce me. I'd turn on my camera and I would be somebody else. I would facilitate the whole session as that character, and it was just so funny. I never knew if my idea would land or not. It was always a risk to do things like that. But what I learned over the years is that Toastmasters is the safe place to risk, because the audience will always tell you in the kindest possible way everything that you need to consider moving forward. If it worked, if you need a tweak, or if you just keep coming back with more of that, one of those three things.
And imagine that playing a different character, you're experiencing somewhat of a newfound freedom for yourself. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, it is. It is a newfound freedom. In fact, this one character, which I thought was really risky, is a male character named Disco Dave. He's sort of stuck in the 70s, really likes the disco thing, hair, mustache, eyebrows, the whole bit. And in fact, Disco Dave is so beloved that he'll be teaching improv tonight at Squim Toastmasters. He emceed a District 2 event, humorous event at a big stage last a week ago. So he got to perform his silly self in person and be the MC for the evening. So sometimes these characters take on a life of their own. The joy that I find is that when I fully embrace that character and let that brain of that character take over, funny things will come into the brain and out of the mouth, and create joy for people. To everyone's laughing, having fun, loving this character, loving Dave, and there's no more fabulous feeling than that.
I love so from the sound of it, I feel like the edutainer title fits you perfectly. And do you feel like you always enjoyed entertaining people like from young?
Mhm,
You
mhm,
have?
mhm. Now, we talked earlier before you started recording about these Genesis moments in our past, in our childhood. Like you shared how you wanted to be a newscaster and your parents got you a microphone, and that was thrilling. I keep this picture of myself on my desk as a reminder that I was always born to perform. So I'm about 18 months. On the back, my mom writes, She sings, dances, plays the harmonica, then claps her hands. And so I didn't really need an audience. I was my own best audience. And I feel like that's one of my messages to people, that if you can be your own best audience, you can be the one giving yourself a standing ovation. You can be your own number one fan. That's where it starts, because regardless of what anybody else thinks, regardless of whether your idea landed or not, if you can congratulate yourself, give yourself a pat on the back for trying something new by being courageous and bold, that's where true confidence can shift you in your life.
I feel like that is very much mirrored into my own life. I feel like the more I enjoy being with myself, the more I enjoy having fun, regardless of how people are responding to it. That's when it feels the most rewarding to me. And that's when I want to continue doing things like the podcast or, whether it's YouTube channel, being on social media, anything, or just in Toastmasters in general, where I present speeches. I have so much fun doing that. Uh, no one could tell me anything otherwise.
Yes, right. Precisely. Precisely. That's the magic. That is the magic. You have
And
found
that
it.
that charisma that you have. I was looking at your website and I was looking at some of the characters you played and your keynote speeches and whatnot. It sounds like perhaps genetics, maybe nature and nurture played a part into that. What do you
Mm-hmm.
think has helped you to develop or enhance your charisma?
Mm-hmm. I always say that I have circus blood. Way back in my family on my mother's side, was the Harrison Brothers Circus. So these were people, they were scrappers, they were nomads, and they would travel around um, with this group of people. Hopefully they didn't have animals. I'm like so against animals in cages, right? But back then, maybe they did. They eventually sold to the Barnum and Bailey's Circus. So my mom always says, "You got the circus blood." You know, born to perform. I don't even, just give me a living room and I'm happy.
That's the title of your business, Showcase Your Shine. I felt like it really had that pizzazz to it, and it sounds like you're really owning it, and it came
Thank
from your
you.
lineage. That's incredible. You have
Well,
a
I have to tell
history.
you that name, Showcase Your Shine, came from a Toastmaster, and this was also during COVID, where I was finally transitioning to make my speaking into a business,
Mhm.
into a livelihood. And so I had conducted a training. I do a lot of training within Toastmasters, and she was there. It was on Zoom, and so after everybody left, she's still there. She said, "You know what I think you do, Rebecca? I think you help people showcase their shine. That's what you do." And it just stopped me in my tracks. Showcase your shine. I, do you think that would be a great name for a company? That's your company, Rebecca. So that in that moment was when I went on, of course, like everybody else does, you go to GoDaddy and you grab the domain and then, do all the business stuff with the state of Washington. So it was this lovely Toastmaster, came out of her brain, her mouth, that I give credit to for that.
So it sounds like Toastmasters has easily woven itself into your professional life, and you found a way to leverage
Yes.
it
Yes.
professionally. Can you tell
Hmm.
us more about that?
Yeah, that was also a great story. So there's a woman by the name of Cheryl Roush, who is an accredited speaker. I think there's 88 accredited speakers within Toastmasters International. This is an accreditation that is very, very hard to get, where you go through different levels. This is for people who have been paid to speak for a number of years and have a keynote that you give. And so there's a bunch of hoops to jump through. And after you pass through all the gates with flying colors, then you are given this speaking designation that Toastmasters International gives, called accredited speaker. So this would be a paid professional speaking designation. She came to District 2 for one of our spring conferences, and talked about this accreditation, what it takes to to achieve this. One of the things that it took is to have 25 speaking engagements that you've given to audiences other than Toastmasters,
Mhm.
where you have spoken for at least 20 minutes and have at least 20 people in the audience. Again, Toastmasters, if they're in the audience, don't count. Even if it's a professional organization, the Toastmasters in the audience do not count. So you have to keep track of all these things. But for me, as well as the what presentation you gave, how long it was, how many people were in the audience, and what you were paid. So you have 3 years to gather all of this data. And for me, I thought that's the framework that I need to move myself forward into the professional speaking, paid speaker category. I
Mhm.
need that framework, something that I can keep track of and pursue. So that was the start. That was 2019. That was the start. And by 2021, so now we're through COVID and all that, right? We're in the midst of COVID. I had achieved enough paid speaking engagements because now I was transitioning in my brain from I'm a speaker in Toastmasters um, to I deserve money for my speaking. I
Mhm.
can get paid for my speaking. I just have to ask for it. I
Mhm.
have to pursue it and ask for it. And it's very hard to do, of course, when you've never been paid before.
Mhm.
But COVID is what helped open that door for me because I had these skills in video production that I'd honed over the previous 10 years. And when COVID happened, of course, we saw a lot of people struggling online in terms of their virtual image. And I thought, I can lend my expertise in this lane
Mhm.
and get paid for it, which is what I did.
That's incredible. So, like, I like how you mentioned earlier that you took you a minute to give yourself permission to ask to be paid
Hmm.
to do something. I think that was maybe bubbling out of you quite naturally. Like other people, okay, oh my gosh, this is a skill. That's hard for me to do. It was coming out of you naturally. So perhaps you weren't even thinking about why would I have people charge me for something I just do naturally on a day-to-day basis. Is that something you were thinking about or crossed your mind?
Well, part of the struggle was and the virtual image thing that was easy because people needed that service
Mhm.
and they were willing to pay for it also because it was their professional livelihood, how they show up on Zoom, how they look, how they sound. They needed that information. But beyond that, because I tired of that topic very quickly, and I didn't want to be known for the rest of my life as the virtual image training lady, I wanted to be known for something else. So for me, that was the biggest struggle was what is that something else that number one, I'm passionate about, number two, I know something about, and number three, somebody would pay me for. So that actually took a lot of work um, and years to sort through. And now I finally have a, a workshop list, a curriculum that I have developed, and a keynote topic that I'm incredibly passionate about. So I that was harder, finding those topics that don't bore me to death, but allow me to help someone else and receive money for that help. Um, that was very hard.
That's such an interesting conflict or challenge to show up because I don't hear a lot of people say, "Well, I'm just bored." So I this isn't working because I'm bored. For a lot of people, it's like it's not working because I'm struggling with this. It sounds like you had a strong sense of self, or you've had a strong sense of self. You've grown up with that, it seems like, and you were looking for something that was, bringing that spark. You wanted to find that thing that maintained that spark inside of you,
Yes. Yeah.
which such an interesting perspective. I don't hear a lot of people talk about that.
Yeah, without the passion, I've always been fortunate at different times in my life to be passionate about what I was doing. And it was leading up to COVID that I felt the passion evaporating from my life. Like, why? why do I feel passionless? It's a horrible, hopeless feeling to be bored, to lack passion. And so first, this idea of becoming a paid speaker, I thought, you know what? I was born to do that. I'm going to figure it out because that thought fills me with energy and hope and passion. So that is the clear direction. Clearly, that is the direction I need to walk in.
And I feel like passion, that's something I always sought for as well in my own life. When I pursued my art degree, that was something I was passionate about.
Yeah.
Even afterwards, I worked a lot of jobs I wasn't passionate about, but I always knew that it was a side gig and there was something that needed to, bring that creativity and that joy back into my life. And I feel like passion is something you have to practice.
Mm.
Like, you have to give it energy or momentum because I feel like I see people often not practice following their passion, so they don't even know that that's what's missing or that's what until maybe you're in
Yeah.
front of them exemplifying it, which I'm picking up that that's what you offer to people. It's like, this is someone who's passionate about it. Oh, this is what passion looks like. This is what aliveness looks like. Oh, okay, this is what I'm missing.
Yeah, yeah. We do pick that up from people. I remember when I was going through that where is my passion phase, how I would see people, like my mother, for example, who was in her 70s. She was producing a feature-length documentary, like her life's dream, and she was so passionate. And I would be jealous and envious of her passion. I feel like without passion, life almost feels like it's not worth living. And this, if we can help others step into their brilliance and find fuel their passion, um, we would have more happiness in the world.
And I think it's so interesting that you found yourself in the Toastmasters experience because originally when I was joining, I was like, is this a little too formal for me? Do I need a little bit more freedom? Because they have the Pathways Educational Program, they have these set guidelines, they have these
Uh-huh.
rules. I
Hmm.
wasn't sure if it was going to be the right fit for me. I
Uh-huh.
questioned that quite a bit.
Yes.
What was that like for you?
Well, back when I started, we had manuals, and I felt like a manual was a very easy thing to manage. And you could do the same manual over and over and over again if you wanted. These 10 speeches gave you a lot of flexibility and latitude. And if you wanted, then you could pursue the leadership components. And in the beginning, I was not even interested in that. I just wanted to tell stories. I just like one story after another. And of course, we met in person and we would get these little, I keep some of these on my desk, these little
Yeah.
pieces of paper where people, after they listen to your speech, they write down some notes and they pass them to you. And then they're sort of like love notes,
Mhm.
that you can keep and reread and make you feel good about yourself. So I have a pile of those over here. Um, so back then I thought it was a simpler system. We didn't have the integration of the speaking topics, story development, presentation skills, along with the leadership projects. It wasn't as in depth. This
Mhm.
is one of the reasons I believe when Pathways rolled out in 2018, and I was a Pathways guy, so I learned it and I traveled all around teaching clubs how to use it. Um, a number of Toastmasters, especially those older, just did not did not embrace it, did not embrace it.
Mhm.
But then new Toastmasters like you, who came in after 2018, this is all you've you've ever had. And so I've often wondered, and maybe you could tell me, I've often wondered from your perspective, how is the online experience for you?
I was mentioning actually in the previous interview I did with Melissa Jean, who's our District 32 director. I told her that Pathways for me worked somewhat because I was an introvert. I was already shy. So having an online program, because in that 1 hour time, it's not really enough time to get all of the group mentoring you want, especially if
Mhm.
you're very self-motivated and you want to learn a lot. So
Mm.
I liked being able to access the different projects and like you said, earlier, the framework, right, for the accreditation. I liked having a framework for knowing, well, how do I develop my speaking skills? Oh, okay, icebreaker, talk about myself. Oh, I can do a research speech, talk about something that's interested to me. So I liked that it provided me with that, and they have some like interesting slides, tools,
Yes.
advices, and tips that I think work just fine. I think the challenge, it's not challenging to me. Like I'm a digital millennial.
Yes,
So
exactly.
we are happy to be on the internet, clicking through it's fine. For people who have very busy lives though. Like I don't have kids, I'm not married. So for people who have very busy lives and they're working a full-time job, do they always have that time to go through and do all of that? In
Hmm.
in addition to meeting a club.
Hmm.
Like sometimes I feel like that definitely weighs people down. And, I'm not really shocked that a lot of the older people pulled away from the program
Hmm.
because I imagine that's the last thing they want is like another obligation or to go on the internet and stare at the computer for an hour or two.
Right.
So yeah, there's some like obvious disconnects and issues there, but for my lifestyle, it's fine. It works.
Yeah. We had a couple members in our club at the time who still had flip phones. So
I've met a couple people with those.
now there are
I
some,
I
oh, go
respect
ahead.
it.
Yes, yes, yes. I mean, for a millennial, that would be a choice. Like, and
Hmm.
I've read articles on this. I'm going to have a flip phone because I don't want to feel like I'm addicted to my iPhone. I'm trying to um, break habits. So you might choose a flip phone just so that you don't have the constant distraction of social media in your face and messaging and the plethora of ways that you can communicate with people these days. It is a little overwhelming. But in this club, people had flip phones because that's the only phone they ever had. It was an upgrade from the BlackBerry. That's why,
Yeah.
which
Some
was
people
an
still have
upgrade
those.
from the rotary phone, which all of them still had at home. So going on the internet was not realistic. So what we did, we accommodated those members. We
Mhm.
didn't want to lose them, and we gave them some flexibility in terms of um, what they were willing or not willing to do.
Well, can you tell us more about that? Like what were some of the things that you guys did to help assist them with that transition?
Yeah, we just said, you have some of these old manuals at home. And so since you're not willing to do pathways and we don't want to lose you, you're here to support. They have a wealth, they had wealth, decades of experience in Toastmasters. So they became mentors, like
Hmm.
that was their superpower, right? And then occasionally they would tell a story, and we decided, and I've talked to other clubs that went through this too with their were older members, that it's okay to have a member or two in a club who's in that older generation who says, I'm here to support people in their journey as best I can. And occasionally I will tell you a story about my life or something that I'm
Hmm.
interested in. And we felt like that was fine. We're
Hmm.
accommodating people, meeting them where they are. That's more important than, you know, following the framework, I feel.
I think that's something we've adjusted to in our club as well. We have Bobby Moore, who's been in Toastmasters for 30 years. We have Jim Sutton, who joins our group from time to time. He's not an official member, but he helped start up
Oh,
professionally speaking. Yes.
Jim Sutton. Yeah, I know Jim. Yeah.
But they're not, trying to achieve pathways goals. But
Right.
they're great mentors. Like you said, they come with a wealth of wisdom
Hmm.
and they're very engaged with the people who are there and needing their knowledge. So I most certainly have appreciated. I soak it up. I love it. I love that they are the mentors for us.
Yes, yeah, that is one of the great things about Toastmasters, isn't it? This built-in mentorship opportunity that we have to find mentors and also to become mentors.
1000%. I would love to go back to your Toastmasters journey and maybe also professionally, what you do as well. How has receiving feedback, what has that experience been like for you? because I know for me, when I received feedback in the
Uh-huh.
beginning, I especially actually when I was in art school, forget that. Forget when I was in high school in art classes getting feedback. I dreaded feedback. And then I just wanted to burst into tears, even though it was never that bad.
That's
People
right.
always had positive things to say about, being a sensitive, creative person. Like, oh my gosh, feedback is just so much. And when I joined Toastmasters, that was just the one thing where I'm like, oh my God, I'm terrified. But somehow
Oh.
I've learned to work with it. And it's taught me so much about how to receive gracefully what
Mhm.
people have to say. And sometimes it's been hard receiving compliments. Sometimes it's hard for me to receive a compliment. What has that been like
Wow.
for you?
Wow. Oh, I'm always up for a compliment. Are you kidding? Yes, always. And of course, secretly, we're always hoping that most of the comments we do receive are compliments. I think one of the hardest things for me to learn is, growing up the way I did with um, a mother who was either not around a lot, so not any feedback, so to speak, or negative feedback, which she got from her mother, so that was handed down. This critical, maybe it was meant to be helpful, but it comes across as dark and mean spirited. For me, my biggest lesson was how to give feedback that it honors the person and encourages the person versus just, here are all the things that I saw that you could do better. And I'm very good at ideas and getting specific. I give great ideas to people, but I have to remember not to just go for my list of ideas, that this is a human being that I'm talking to.
Mhm.
And my approach in how I deliver these ideas or suggestions for consideration, that is what Toastmasters has taught me to do very well the hard way, because as you know, as an evaluator, we also get evaluated. And it was through the general evaluator's comments, like, Rebecca, that evaluation you just gave was brutal. Those were exact words that I remember that actually changed my life. It was hard to hear. I knew it in my heart that she was right. And she said this in front of everybody. That was brutal. And I actually had the gall to argue with her, which you don't do either. And I should know better, but my ego was on the line. So initially, I didn't take it very well. And then the minute I walked out of that meeting, I thought, what have I just done to my reputation? I made a big mistake. So I had a lot of repair to do. I eventually gave a speech about it, a humorous speech about this whole exercise. And that was like sort of like the circle moment, was where I could repair the relationship, apologize, and then give a speech about what I'd learned. And from that moment forward, I have become a more thoughtful, encouraging evaluator. Now, in terms of how I receive feedback, I look for those specific ideas that can help me improve. And I think the hardest thing is for us to be that person for ourselves. Like, I'm going to focus on the things I did well. I'm going to focus with my own objective eyes if I'm watching a recording of myself and what I can improve, and not beat myself up for it. That's the
I
hardest thing to learn to do.
I agree. And that's why feedback has been hard for me in the past, is because how hard I am already
Yes.
on myself. So it's hard for me to receive it, even though it's not coming with that ill intent at all. I'm just being defensive.
Yes, right. Being defensive. Exactly. I think one of the worst comments that I received in the last year was I emceed a huge event, 600 plus people event, person event. And I reached out to this one woman who was on the planning committee who hired me for some feedback. And her only sentence, this is the only sentence she gave: I don't think you should sing on stage. That's all she said. Not good job, not anything, just that one sentence. And that for me, I thought, boy, I sure hope you don't give feedback like that to other people, but I imagine that you do. You know, that was unkind, uncalled for, and unhelpful. Because I
Wow.
do sing on stage and I will never stop singing on stage. In fact, it's one of the things that I do. I'm a parody singer-songwriter. It is what I do on stage.
Right. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I know.
Wow.
Unkind, uncalled for, and just unnecessary. Don't do that.
I think generally anything that, like you said, is mean-spirited or, you can tell when sometimes like that, something like that comes at you. Sometimes
Yes.
people are projecting. There's some of that going
Yes.
on too.
Yes.
They're putting that out on you. And I guess just in general, as humans who are learning how to become more self-aware, we have to catch ourselves and notice that, notice when people are doing that.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Because at the same time, there are other people who wrote me love notes saying, that was the funniest thing I'd ever seen.
Hmm.
I just stopped in my tracks. We were all just in awe, that sort of thing. But yet it's that negative comment, just because of the way our brains are
Hmm.
wired, that sticks word for word, word for word.
Uh-huh. But it sounds like you have developed a somewhat any unstoppable core approach to the things that you do. You're still driving, pushing forward in spite of that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I realized that that was about, those comments that we get, just as you pointed out, are not about us oftentimes. They're about the person who made the comment. And so we have to take everything in context. It's just like you're doing your research, reading reviews to decide whether you're going to buy a product or not. And there are 10,000 five-star reviews, 5,000 four-star reviews, and then there's a couple of one-star reviews. And I'm always curious, aren't you? What do the one-star review people say? And very often they have a whole lot to say. Right?
This is
But
where I get myself in trouble in the comment section in YouTube, and I'm looking at like, oh, I go down the rabbit hole. I'm like, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have done it.
yeah,
Not a good
right,
idea.
right. Yeah, not a good idea. So don't let that one comment out of 15,000, pull you off course and steal your thunder for yourself, right? You got to let it go. We have to let it go.
Let it go. That's beautiful words of advice. Now, what would be your advice for prospective members who are considering Toastmasters?
Wow. Well, there's a quote from, oh, I can't even think of his name now. He was in Toastmasters for 60 years, and this was one of the members that came to our club with a flip phone. So he says he would always tell that, somebody new walks into the club, he would walk up to them and he'd say, Toastmasters will do two things. It will change your life and I can't remember the second thing. Make you a better speaker and change your life. Maybe that was it. But it will change your life in ways that you cannot even dream of at this point. A lot of people think, oh, it's going to be scary. It might be from time to time, and that's a good thing. That is a good thing because then you're challenging yourself, you're growing, you're moving beyond, and it is these skills that can elevate a person to the level of superstardom. These skills.
Woo!
Hmm.
Yeah.
Truly.
In after your years of experience in Toastmasters and professionally speaking at keynotes and like through to huge audiences, what do you feel like is that number one tip that people could use to becoming an effective communicator?
Yes, I always have a little talk with myself before I get on stage. And it goes something like this: you are so ready. You are here to share your brilliance with your audience. You, it's like these positive things, and I have to let go. I also tell myself, you know, because we worry, like, what if I forget to do this? What if I forget to say this? What if? To say, whatever happens is meant to happen. So
Mhm.
let it go. Let it go. Be you. Be connected. That's the biggest thing. Be connected with your audience. Be willing to be flexible and have fun.
Woo! Those are the best piece of advice. I admit that I also like to boost myself up or hype myself up a little bit when I go in front of an audience and I'm doing something. I'm like, this is going to be the best thing ever.
Yes,
You're
yes,
going
the
to have
best
so
thing.
much fun.
Yes, yes, yeah,
I think that's
exactly.
important, that inner dialogue that we're having with ourselves.
Yeah, yeah. Because so often this is what trips people up. You prepare and you know what you want to say, you know what you've practiced, but we all know that there are four speeches we actually give, or four presentations we actually give with each speech. You've probably heard of this one. The the speech that you wanted to give, the one that the audience heard, the one that you actually gave, and the one you'll give next time. So I always walk off the stage and, you do this, like, good job, you did well. And I'm always thinking, like, okay, I forgot that, I forgot that. But you know what? It's okay. It doesn't matter. What happened was meant to happen.
Mhm.
And it was a, a great event.
It was a moment in time and you can't
A
get it
moment in
back. It
time.
was a
That's a
moment in
great
time.
way. Yes, a moment in time. Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you, Rebecca, for joining us today with the podcast. I'm so appreciative that I want everyone to know Rebecca's website is going to be down below. If you're interested in checking out her website, I would highly recommend it. She gives keynote speeches, she has courses available, and she's a guest at other areas. What's
Mm-hmm.
your next upcoming event? Other
Well,
than, I know you have the improv show, but other than that, do you have anything else? You can talk about that too.
yes, yes. Well, tomorrow night at Squim Toastmasters, Disco Dave will be stirring things up with his improv magic. He has also been invited to an in-person club in District 2, the Extraordinaires Club. It's an advanced club. He, this is the first time he can say, I'm glad to be back, and really mean it. Usually that's one of his lines, like, it's good to be back. I've never been here before. I just like saying that. But um, but this time he was there last December at their December meeting, and they loved him so much in this improv that he teaches, they're inviting him back. So he has that on his schedule as well.
And what's the date for that?
That is December. It is the second December, the second Saturday in December. Like,
Oh, it's a
I think
Saturday, so we don't have an excuse. Everyone can make it.
yeah, that's
Hell.
right. Yeah, that's right. That's
Okay.
right. He's
All right.
excited.
We'll have to look into that. All right. So we are about to close out this podcast. Thank you, Rebecca, so much for being here. Is there anything else you'd like to leave the audience with before we end this?
Well, if you're not a Toastmaster, I encourage you to check out a few clubs. Every Toastmasters club is a little different, has its own personality. You will find one that just feels like home. And once you do, um, commit to yourself to work the program, stay in for at least a year, and you may end up like me, a lifetime member.
That's a commitment. You're signing on the dotted line right there.
Yeah,
You still
because you
got the
want
rest of
to.
the lifetime to go.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Yeah. Well, my big mistake was taking off those couple of decades. I realized after I rejoined Toastmasters, had I stayed in Toastmasters, my life would have been very different. So,
Hmm.
topic for
It's
another
really
day.
good to hear these words of wisdoms and these gems from everyone. And I've heard people say, it's a good thing you're doing it young or you're doing it right now. I mean, I'm 31, so I'm like, I'm like, yeah, I'm young, but
Yes,
I'm
yeah.
still kind of learning this skill newly at this point in time in my life. So, but yes, I'm absolutely appreciative. I'm absolutely appreciative of guests like you who I get to learn from, and it's just been such a treat.
Thank you. Thank you. And you're a brilliant interviewer, going back to your vision of yourself when you were, what is it, nine years
9
old with the um,
is
tape
a
recorder, and
yeah.
you're doing it now full circle is just brilliant. So it's awesome.
All right, everyone, that's going to be the end of the podcast. Thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you next time for our next episode. And let us show everyone our tea before we close this out
Oh,
officially.
yes. Here it is,
All right.
which is good for the voice. Warm tea.
Oh, there we
Right?
go.
Okay. I love your cup.
Thank you.